began as a love story in the shadows, a quiet rebellion against centuries of rigid tradition. Banaz Mahmoud, a young Kurdish woman in London, dared to follow her heart, seeking happiness on her own terms. But in her world, love was not her choice to make. Her every move was watched, her every step judged, until whispers turned into plans to silence her forever. Why would a family conspire against their own? How could love ignite such hatred? When Banaz vanished on a cold January morning in 2006, the truth began to unravel. A chilling tale of betrayal, violence, and a system that failed her when she needed it most. Who were the men who carried out the horrific act? Could justice ever truly be served for a life taken so cruelly? And what drove Banaz, even in her final days, to fight for her right to live and love freely? This content may be disturbing to some viewers as it discusses sensitive topics related to assault. Proceed with discretion. Welcome to the Crime Series. I am glad to have you join us on another video. Kindly subscribe, like, and share. Let me know where you are watching from. Banaz Mahmoud was born on December 16, 1985, in the Muradel tribal area of Kaladiza, a rural and traditional region in Iraqi Kurdistan. Her early childhood was spent in a patriarchal society where strict adherence to customs and traditions defined family and community life. Banaz was the third of 5 daughters born to Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud and Behia Mahmoud, who adhered to a rigid code of honor that dictated their interactions within and outside the family. In 1995, when Banaz was 10 years old, the Mahmoud family sought asylum in the United Kingdom, fleeing the instability of post-Gulf War Iraq. Settling in Mitcham, South London, the family faced a dual challenge, adapting to a vastly different culture while holding tightly to their own traditions. For Banaz, this transition was especially difficult, as she straddled the expectations of her Kurdish heritage and the freedoms offered by British society. Banaz's upbringing in the UK was marked by cultural and familial constraints. While other children her age explored opportunities and developed their identities freely, Banaz's life was dictated by the strict rules of her family. Even as a young girl, she was taught that her behavior directly impacted the family's honor. This pressure shaped her interactions with peers and limited her ability to form friendships outside of the Kurdish community. Despite the oppressive environment, Banaz displayed a natural curiosity and desire for a normal life. Her family's strict adherence to traditional values became more pronounced as Banaz entered adolescence. Discussions about her future increasingly centered on her role as a daughter, one destined to marry within the Kurdish community and uphold the family's honor. By her mid-teens, these expectations crystallized into plans for an arranged marriage, a decision that would alter the trajectory of her life. Her father, Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud, ruled the family with strict adherence to these traditions, but true authority often rested with his younger brother, Ari Aga Mahmoud, who was considered the head of the extended family network in the UK. This dynamic created a complex and hierarchical family structure, where decisions were made collectively by the men, with little to no input from the women. The family sought to maintain their cultural identity and enforce their values in a foreign land. This often manifested as rigid control over the lives of their daughters. For the Mahmoud women, this meant adhering to conservative dress codes, limiting social interactions, and obeying the authority of male family members. Deviations from these expectations were seen as acts of rebellion, and worse, as bringing shame upon the family. Banaz's eldest sister was forced into an arranged marriage, a fate that was also imposed on her younger sister, Payman, at just 16 years old. Outwardly, the family presented themselves as progressive and integrated into British society. However, inside their home, they upheld archaic and oppressive values that left little room for individuality or dissent. Bekal, one of Banaz's sisters, was among the first to rebel against these restrictions. Her decision to leave the family home in 2002 and seek refuge in foster care marked a turning point. Bekal's defiance was viewed as an unforgivable betrayal, leading to threats of violence and ostracism from the wider Kurdish community. Mahmoud's inability to control Bekal was seen as a weakness, further compounding the family's determination to enforce strict compliance from the remaining daughters. At the age of 16, Banaz Mahmud was forced into an arranged marriage with a man from her family's hometown in Kurdistan, Iraq. The marriage was arranged in accordance with the Mahmud family's traditional beliefs, which prioritized maintaining cultural norms and family honor over individual desires and well-being. The man, 10 years her senior, was described as illiterate, deeply conservative, and old-fashioned, holding views that Banaz would later describe as being from 50 years prior. From the very beginning, Banaz's marriage was fraught with abuse and control. Her husband exerted dominance over her through physical and sexual violence, leaving her isolated and terrified. Banaz's cries for help fell on deaf ears within her family. They insisted that she endure the abuse, framing it as her duty as a wife and warning her of the dishonor she would bring upon the family if she left her husband. As the abuse continued, Banaz's health and spirit deteriorated. Trapped in a cycle of violence and despair, she began to question the cultural expectations imposed on her. It became increasingly clear to Banaz that remaining in the marriage would ultimately cost her her life. In 2005, after 2 years of enduring this harrowing existence, Banaz made the courageous decision to leave her husband and return to her family home. However, this act of defiance came at a steep price. Within her family and the broader community, her decision to end the marriage was seen as a direct challenge to the family's honor and authority. Her father and uncle, deeply entrenched in their patriarchal beliefs, were enraged by her perceived disobedience. Instead of supporting Banaz, they viewed her return as a betrayal that required consequences. After returning to her family home in 2005, she met Rahmat Suleimani, a kind and supportive Iranian Kurd. The pair connected immediately, and their relationship quickly blossomed into a deep and profound love. Rahmat was everything Banaz's husband was not: gentle, caring, and respectful. Their meetings, though infrequent, were filled with joy and a shared sense of hope for a future together. Banaz, for the first time in her life, experienced what it felt like to be treated as an equal and to be loved for who she truly was. However, their love story unfolded under a dark shadow. Both Banaz and Rahmat understood the danger they faced. Her family's rigid adherence to honor and tradition left no room for romantic relationships outside their control. They tried to keep their relationship secret, meeting discreetly and avoiding any public displays of affection. But the community's watchful eyes, combined with familial surveillance, made secrecy nearly impossible. Banaz spoke openly to Rahmat about her dreams of a life free from fear and control. She wanted to build a family based on love and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the oppressive environment in which she was raised. Rahmat, equally committed, promised to stand by her side no matter the consequences. Their relationship was not just a source of personal happiness, but also a form of silent rebellion against the oppressive traditions that had governed Banaz's life. The turning point came when a member of the Kurdish community spotted Banaz and Rahmat sharing a kiss outside Morden tube station. This innocent act of affection was seen as an unforgivable transgression. News of the encounter quickly reached Banaz's family, igniting a firestorm of rage and setting into motion a chain of events that would ultimately seal her fate. Banaz's family warned her in no uncertain terms to end the relationship, emphasizing the shame she was bringing upon them. Her father and uncle viewed her actions as a direct affront to their authority and an unforgivable stain on their honor. Banaz's refusal to comply only deepened their resolve to punish her. Despite the mounting threats, Banaz and Rahmat remained devoted to one another. They believed that their love was worth fighting for, even as the walls of danger closed in around them. On December 2, 2005, Banaz Mahmud's life took an even darker turn when she overheard a chilling conversation that would ultimately seal her fate. At her uncle Ari Aga Mahmud's house in South London, a family meeting, referred to as a war council, was convened to address what they saw as an insurmountable dishonor brought upon the family. Banaz's actions, which included leaving her abusive arranged marriage and forming a relationship of her own choosing with Rahmat Suleimani, had shattered the family's traditional values. To the men of the Mahmud family, these actions were unforgivable. The council consisted of Banaz's father, Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud, her uncle Ari Aga Mahmoud, and several male relatives. The meeting was conducted in secrecy, with an air of determination to restore their tarnished honor. Ari, known for his domineering personality and de facto leadership of the family, spearheaded the discussion. During this meeting, it was decided that both Banaz and Rahmat must be killed. Banaz, who had overheard portions of the conversation, was acutely aware of the grave danger she faced. The council's decision to end her life was not merely impulsive, but methodically planned. Fearing for her life, Banaz exhibited remarkable courage by going to the police. On December 12, 2005, she submitted a handwritten letter at Wimbledon Police Station, detailing her fears and naming the men she believed were planning to kill her. Her statement was not vague. It specifically identified the individuals she suspected and described the context of the War Council meeting. In her letter, she stated, "If anything happens to me, it will be them." Despite her desperate plea, Banaz's concerns were not taken seriously. Authorities dismissed her fears as merely dramatic, failing to comprehend the gravity of the situation. On New Year's Eve 2005, Banaz Mahmoud's life took a harrowing turn as her father orchestrated a chilling attempt to end her life. That evening, Banaz's father, Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud, took her to her grandmother's house under the guise of a family visit. However, the reality was far more sinister. As Banaz entered the home, she was presented with a glass of brandy, a highly unusual and alarming gesture given her father's strict views against alcohol. Banaz, acutely aware of her family's intentions, was paralyzed with fear, but managed to maintain her composure. Her father wore blue gloves, a detail that further heightened Banaz's terror, as it indicated premeditation. He repeatedly instructed her not to look at him, creating an ominous and oppressive atmosphere. Banaz's instincts screamed danger, and she realized she had little time to act. Summoning every ounce of courage, she shattered a window and fled the house barefoot, leaving behind a scene of desperation and violence. Bleeding and disoriented, Banaz stumbled into a nearby cafe, seeking refuge. The cafe staff, startled by her appearance, quickly called the police. When officers arrived, Banaz's distress was evident. She recounted the events of the evening, detailing how her father had attempted to poison her and how she narrowly escaped. Despite her visible injuries and palpable fear, the attending officers dismissed her claims again as dramatic and manipulative. Banaz was taken to the hospital, where her boyfriend, Ramat Suleimani, recorded her account of the incident on his phone. This recording would later become a vital piece of evidence. In the video, Banaz's voice trembled as she described her father's actions, yet she expressed determination to fight for her life. "I know they want to kill me," she said, her words a haunting prophecy of what was to come.
As we go into the most intense part of this video, kindly like and subscribe to this channel. It gives me motivation to create more videos. If you love this video and wish to see more, kindly subscribe.
On January 22, 2006, an attempt was made to kidnap Ramat Suleimani. Two men, later identified as associates of Banaz's family, ambushed Ramat and threatened to kill both him and Banaz. Terrified but resolute, the couple reported the incident to the police the following day, detailing the threats and providing further information about the family's hostility. Banaz was scheduled to return to the police station on January 24th to give a full statement. Tragically, she never made it. That morning, Banaz's parents left the family home, supposedly to take their youngest daughter to school and run errands. Banaz was left asleep in the living room, unaware of the horror that awaited her. Shortly after her parents' departure, three men, Mohammad Murid Hama, Mohammed Saleh Ali, and Omar Hussein, entered the house. These men had been dispatched by Banaz's father and uncle to carry out the murder they had meticulously planned. The details of Banaz's final moments are harrowing. The men subjected her to over 2 hours of unspeakable brutality. She was deeply sexually assaulted, tortured, and ultimately strangled with a cord. The violence was not only a means to end her life, but also an act of dominance and cruelty meant to assert their power over her. After killing Banaz, the perpetrators stuffed her body into a suitcase. In a premeditated effort to conceal their crime, they transported the suitcase to Handsworth, Birmingham, where it was buried in the garden of a house belonging to a family acquaintance. The choice of location was strategic. as they believed it would divert suspicion away from them. Banaz's disappearance was reported by Ramat Suleimani on the same day she was killed. His repeated attempts to alert the police underscored the urgency of the situation. However, the initial response from the authorities was again lackluster. Her family insisted she had simply left to stay with a friend and portrayed themselves as a modern, liberal household. This portrayal temporarily hindered the investigation, allowing the perpetrators more time to cover their tracks. Ramat's persistence was instrumental in pushing the authorities to take action. He provided them with critical information, including Banaz's earlier reports of threats and violence from her family. Despite this, early efforts by the police were marred by systemic failures. The initial police interviews with Banaz's parents and uncle revealed inconsistencies in their accounts. While they insisted Banaz had a history of staying out overnight, there was no corroborating evidence to support this claim. Detectives noted discrepancies in their stories, but these red flags were not immediately pursued. Compounding this, Ramat's reports of an attempted kidnapping on January 22nd, just 2 days prior to her disappearance, were not fully investigated at the time. It was only when the Metropolitan Police's Homicide and Serious Crime Command, led by Detective Chief Inspector Caroline Good, took over the case that momentum began to build. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Good and her team began meticulously piecing together evidence. They compiled a timeline of events, reviewed previous reports Banaz had made to the police, and re-examined the actions of her family in the days leading up to her disappearance. A breakthrough came when investigators accessed Banaz's handwritten letter submitted to Wimbledon Police Station in December 2005. The letter detailed her fears and explicitly named those she believed were plotting to kill her, including her father, uncle, and other family members. Despite this critical document being in police records, its significance had been overlooked until now. It became a cornerstone of the investigation, highlighting the tragic extent to which Banaz's warnings had been ignored. As the investigation intensified, Ramat's account of Banaz's final days provided additional leads. Detectives began to view Banaz's disappearance not as a simple missing person case, but as a probable homicide rooted in honor-based violence. This shift in perspective marked the beginning of a determined effort to uncover the truth and bring those responsible to justice. The investigation into Banaz's disappearance took a significant turn on February 4, 2006, when Mohammad Marid Hama, one of the men who had been implicated in previous incidents involving Banaz, was arrested and charged and placed under covert surveillance while in custody. Using hidden recording devices, investigators captured incriminating conversations in which Hama openly boasted about his role in Banaz's murder. He described in detail how Banaz had been tortured and killed. He spoke of how she was subjected to hours of abuse before being strangled with a plastic cord. He also implicated other family members, including Banaz's father, Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud, her uncle, Ari Aga Mahmoud, and her cousins, Mohammed Saleh Ali and Omar Hussein. The callousness with which he recounted the events provided detectives with a chilling insight into the mindset of the perpetrators. Investigators were able to corroborate Hama's account through phone and vehicle tracking data. These records revealed the movements of the suspects on the day of Banaz's murder and the subsequent disposal of her body. This evidence pointed to a house in Handsworth, Birmingham, where Banaz's body was believed to be buried. The house, owned by a relative of one of the suspects, had bricked-up walls and signs of recent excavation work in the garden. The search for Banaz's body intensified, and on April 28, 2006, detectives excavated the garden in Handsworth. Buried several feet beneath the ground, inside a suitcase, were Banaz's remains. The suitcase had been deliberately placed under a leaking pipe, likely in an attempt to hasten the decomposition of her body and destroy evidence. Despite the advanced state of decomposition, forensic specialists were able to confirm her identity, providing crucial closure to the investigation and irrefutable evidence of her murder. This breakthrough not only confirmed Banaz's tragic fate, but also strengthened the case against the suspects. The discovery of her body marked a pivotal moment in the investigation, shifting the focus from a missing person case to a murder inquiry with tangible evidence. It galvanized the resolve of the investigative team, led by Detective Chief Inspector Caroline Good, to bring all those responsible to justice. The murder of Banaz Mahmoud not only shocked the United Kingdom, but also posed a significant challenge for law enforcement, as key suspects fled the country to avoid justice. Two of Banaz's cousins, Mohammed Saleh Ali and Omar Hussein, fled to Iraqi Kurdistan immediately following the crime. For years, Ali and Hussein evaded capture, living under the protection of family members and local authorities in the semi-autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan. The suspects believed they were untouchable, as no prior extraditions had been successfully conducted from Iraq to the United Kingdom. However, Scotland Yard, the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police Service, remained undeterred, and Detective Chief Inspector Caroline Good and her team began to explore every possible avenue to bring them back to face justice. In October 2007, a breakthrough occurred when Mohammed Saleh Ali was arrested in Suleymania, a region in Iraq. He was arrested following a separate criminal incident. Ali had killed a teenage boy in a hit-and-run accident, bringing him to the attention of local authorities. Recognizing the opportunity, Scotland Yard initiated extradition proceedings. The process was fraught with legal and diplomatic hurdles, as there was no established precedent for extradition from Iraq to the UK. Yet, in June 2009, Ali was successfully extradited, marking the first ever extradition from Iraq to the United Kingdom. This achievement was hailed as a landmark moment in international justice and demonstrated the determination of the investigative team. Omar Hussein, on the other hand, remained in hiding, shielded by family members, who held influential positions within the Iraqi Kurdistan military forces. His whereabouts were known to the authorities, but capturing him proved challenging due to his family's protection and the remote location of his refuge. In December 2009, Hussein was involved in a domestic dispute with one of his brothers, which resulted in him being shot in the leg. When he sought medical treatment at a hospital, local authorities detained him, providing another opportunity for Scotland Yard to act. Extradition proceedings for Hussein faced similar challenges as those for Ali, including resistance from local officials and logistical difficulties. Hussein claimed he had not been in the UK at the time of Banaz's murder, attempting to present a case of mistaken identity. However, prosecutors presented irrefutable evidence, including welfare benefit records and photographic evidence from a prior arrest in London, proving his presence in the UK at the time of the crime. In March 2010, Hussein was extradited to England to face trial. The successful extraditions of both men were celebrated as a testament to the persistence and resourcefulness of the Metropolitan Police. Building a compelling case against the individuals responsible for Banaz Mahmoud's murder was a monumental task, complicated by the lack of cooperation from her family and the wider Kurdish community. Detectives faced significant resistance, not only from the suspects, but also from individuals within the community who sought to protect the perpetrators and undermine the investigation. The testimonies of Ramat Suleimani, Banaz's boyfriend, and her sister Bekhal were pivotal. Ramat, despite living under constant threat, provided critical insights into Banaz's fears, her family's threats, and the timeline of events leading to her murder. His dedication to seeking justice came at great personal cost, as he was forced into witness protection and lived in isolation for the rest of his life. Bekhal, who had fled the family home years earlier due to abuse, became another courageous voice in the case. She provided damning evidence against her father, uncle, and cousins, recounting their discussions about Banaz's disobedience and their determination to restore family honor. Bekhal's testimony was given under extreme protective measures, including appearing in court behind a screen and wearing a niqab to conceal her identity. Her decision to speak out resulted in her permanent estrangement from her family and a life of hiding. The use of covert recordings played a crucial role in corroborating the witness testimonies and unraveling the conspiracy. The trial of Banaz Mahmoud's killers began on March 5, 2007, at the Central Criminal Court in London. This high-profile case garnered significant attention due to its brutal nature and the cultural complexities surrounding honor-based violence. The prosecution faced a monumental task of piecing together a case against the perpetrators, many of whom were members of Banaz's own family. The central figures in the trial were Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud, Banaz's father, Ari Aga Mahmoud, her uncle, and Mohammad Marid Hama, her cousin. They faced charges of murder, conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and related offenses. The prosecution, led by Nazir Afzal, presented evidence that revealed the calculated and cold-blooded nature of the crime. The defense attempted to downplay the allegations, arguing that there was insufficient evidence linking some of the accused to the crime. They suggested that the accusations were part of a cultural misunderstanding, but this argument was dismantled by the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution. Phone records, vehicle tracking data, and forensic evidence all pointed to a coordinated effort by the accused to carry out the murder and dispose of Banaz's body. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, with moments of raw emotion as the gruesome details of Banaz's death were recounted. The jury, composed of individuals from diverse backgrounds, listened intently as the prosecution presented its case. Throughout the trial, the Metropolitan Police's investigative efforts were commended, particularly the work of Detective Chief Inspector Caroline Good, who led the case with unwavering determination. After 14 weeks of harrowing testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. Banaz's father, Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud, and her uncle, Ari Aga Mahmoud, were found guilty of her murder. Both men played pivotal roles in orchestrating the crime. Mahmoud authorized the killing, while Ari, as the family head, took charge of planning and execution. Their actions led to life imprisonment sentences, with Mahmoud receiving a minimum term of 20 years and Ari a minimum term of 23 years, reflecting the severity of their premeditated actions. Further convictions followed. Mohammed Hama, who directly participated in the rape, torture, and murder of Banaz, pleaded guilty early in the trial. His detailed and chilling admissions, recorded while he was in custody, were instrumental in implicating other family members. Hama received a life sentence with a minimum term of 17 years. Muhammad Saleh Ali and Omar Hussein, Banaz's cousins, fled to Iraqi Kurdistan after the murder. Their extradition to the UK marked a groundbreaking legal achievement, as it was the first successful extradition from Iraq to the United Kingdom. Both men were convicted for their roles in the murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and perverting the course of justice. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, with Ali receiving a minimum term of 22 years and Hussein 21 years. Dana Amin, another cousin, played a crucial role in disposing of Banaz's body and preventing her lawful burial. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison in 2013. His subsequent appeal against the conviction and sentence was dismissed, underscoring the strength of the evidence against him. Additionally, Shtawan Hama, though not directly involved in the murder, was convicted for conspiring to pervert the course of justice and served his sentence. The trial exposed the extent of the complicity within the Kurdish community, as more than 50 individuals were implicated in either the planning, execution, or cover-up of Banaz's murder. While not all faced charges, the convictions sent a powerful message that such crimes would not be tolerated. Judge Brian Barker described the murder as barbaric and condemned the perpetrators for valuing their so-called honor over the life of a young woman. The sentences were seen as a milestone in the fight against honor-based violence, inspiring further reforms and raising awareness about the challenges faced by victims like Banaz. In the aftermath of Banaz Mahmoud's tragic murder, efforts were made to honor her memory and acknowledge the systemic failures that contributed to her death. On June 26, 2007, a memorial service was held at Morden Assembly Hall. This gathering, which brought together activists, law enforcement, and members of the wider community, served as a somber reflection on the societal and institutional changes required to prevent similar tragedies. Banaz's grave at Merton and Sutton Joint Cemetery in Morden was initially left unmarked by her family, a poignant testament to their rejection of her life and choices. The Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organization, IKWRO, stepped in to ensure that Banaz's final resting place was dignified. A granite headstone was placed at her grave, inscribed with her name and the dates of her birth and death. This headstone was funded by contributions from police officers involved in her case and lead prosecutor Nazir Afzal, symbolizing their commitment to her memory. Following the trials and subsequent burial, Ramat Suleimani Banaz's boyfriend was placed in the UK's witness protection program. This meant abandoning his identity, his community, and the life he had built. Living in isolation and under constant threat from those who believed he had betrayed cultural norms, Ramat struggled to adjust. His grief for Banaz was profound, and the traumatic memories of their time together, coupled with the harrowing events surrounding her death, weighed heavily on him. Ramat's mental health began to deteriorate in the years following the trials. Despite his efforts to start anew, he found it nearly impossible to move forward. His sense of loss was compounded by the knowledge that Banaz's death could have been prevented if authorities had acted on her repeated warnings. He reportedly expressed feelings of guilt, blaming himself for being unable to protect Banaz. These emotions were exacerbated by the challenges of living under a new identity. Witness protection, while designed to safeguard individuals, often imposes significant emotional and psychological burdens. Ramat's isolation from his culture, family, and community left him with few avenues for support. In 2016, a decade after Banaz's murder, Ramat took his own life. His death was a devastating reminder of the long-term consequences of honor-based violence, not just for the direct victims, but for those who loved them. Detective Chief Inspector Caroline Good, who led the investigation into Banaz's murder, referred to Ramat as one of the true heroes of the case. She noted that, without his persistence, Banaz's disappearance might not have been investigated thoroughly.